Somewhere between 2011 and 2015, the future King of England sat in a room and was handed a bag of cash. Not a check, not a wire transfer humming quietly between two banks. A bag. On at least one occasion, reportedly, a Fortnum Mason carrier bag, the posh green department store bag people use to carry hampers and jars of marmalade. Except this one didn't have marmalade in it. It had money. And across 3 separate meetings, the sums involved reportedly came to around 3 million euros, in cash, handed over in person by a Qatari politician to Charles, the man who had spent his entire life telling the rest of us how to live properly. Let me be clear about something before we go one sentence further because it matters. No wrongdoing was established here, no crime. What Charles did was, as far as anyone has found, broadly lawful. The money went to his charity. Auditors looked at it and were satisfied. I'm not here to accuse the king of a single illegal act, and I won't, because there isn't one on the record. This isn't a story about crime. This is a story about a picture, because there's the man, the conscience of the establishment, the ethical lecturer, the future head of state, and there's the carrier bag of foreign cash on the table in front of him. And once you've seen those two things in the same room, you can't unsee them. He wasn't caught doing this by some enemy, by the way. Nobody hacked him. Nobody leaked it in a way he could deny. His own household, in the end, confirmed the details. He self-owned by simply being exactly who he was. The one man in Britain who could least afford to be photographed near a suitcase of cash doing precisely that. And here's the thread I want you to hold, because I'll pull it hard later. The detail that turns this from merely awkward into something genuinely serious isn't the amount. It's not even the shopping bag, as good as that image is. It's what happened to the money next, where it went, how it was handled, who touched it on the way. That's the part I'm saving. Stay with me, because to feel why it lands, you have to understand the man it landed on first. So let's talk about the man, because the contradiction here isn't a detail, it's his entire identity. For 40 years, Charles built a brand, and it was a good brand, genuinely. He was the royal who cared, the one lecturing architects about ugly buildings, lecturing governments about the environment before it was fashionable, lecturing corporations about sustainability, lecturing all of us, gently and endlessly, about doing things the right way. Integrity, transparency, standards. That was the product. That was what made him different from a normal, silent, ribbon-cutting royal. He had a conscience, and he wanted you to know it. Now set that man, that 40-year sermon on doing things properly, next to the mechanism. Cash, in person, in bags, from a foreign political figure. No paper trail at the actual moment the money changed hands. No check you could photograph, no transfer with a timestamp. Just a man and a bag and a handshake. And here's the trap, and I want to be careful with it. The trap is not that accepting a donation is illegal. It broadly wasn't found to be. Charities take large gifts all the time, and there's nothing unlawful about a wealthy foreign donor being generous. That's not the contradiction. The contradiction is the method, because the method, the cash, the bag, the quiet in-person handover, was the exact, precise opposite of the values he'd been selling the British public for 4 decades. He spent 40 years telling us how things should be done, and then, on how this was done, he did the one thing his own brand said you don't do, which lands us in the real problem. Because there are only 2 ways to read this, and I genuinely want you to pick one in your head, because your answer says a lot about how you see the whole monarchy. Here are the 2 doors, and neither of them is comfortable. Door number 1. It was naive. Charles is a well-meaning, slightly otherworldly man who genuinely did not clock how catastrophic millions of euros in a carrier bag would look to a normal person. He's a prince. He's never carried his own luggage, never mind his own cash. Maybe he simply didn't compute it. But you, walk through that door and look what it costs him. Because this is the man sold to us as the wise elder statesman, the thoughtful one, the king in waiting with judgment. And door 1 says that same man had a blind spot the size of a suitcase. That he couldn't see what a teenager working a till would have seen instantly? That's not flattering. That's a man whose famous good judgment just failed a very simple test. Door number 2. He understood exactly how it looked. He knew, and he did it anyway, because the charity wanted the money and the donor preferred to give it this way, and Charles decided the cause was worth the optics. Walk through that door, and the ethics brand, the whole conscience of the nation thing, was always at least partly a performance. Something he wore in public and set down in private when there was 3 million euros on the table. So which is it? Careless or calculated? Naive or knowing? Tell me in the comments, genuinely, I read them, because I think this one splits people right down the middle, and the split tells you whether you see Charles as a good man with a blind spot or a brand with a man attached. There is no third door where a suitcase of cash makes a moral crusader look good. Pick one. Now let's talk about what was actually at stake, because this didn't happen in a vacuum, and it didn't stay a single tidy story. This landed at the worst possible time, in the worst possible cluster, because around the same period, there were separate questions swirling around Charles's charities, a whole other controversy, one involving honors and a foreign donor, that eventually forced the resignation of one of his closest, longest-serving aides. Hold on to that. A man who'd been at Charles's side for decades, gone, over a linked mess about donations and access. We'll come back to him because he's a whole story on his own, but stack it up. His charitable foundation had to come out and state publicly that yes, the money was passed into its accounts, that the trustees were informed, that auditors had looked and seen no issue, and I'll say that again because it's fair and it's true. Auditors were cited as satisfied, no wrongdoing established, the money reached the charity, no Nobody found a crime, but the timing is the stake. Here is a future king, months and years from the throne, with his charity network already under a cloud, suddenly in the headlines for cash and access and shopping bags. The thing on the line here was never a fine. He was never going to be fined. What was on the line was the credibility of the entire institution he was about to inherit. The monarchy sells one thing above all, that it is above this, above grubby money, above transactions, above the mess. And here was the heir, personally, in the mess. That's the cost. Not pounds, trust. Okay, this is the moment I promised you right at the start. Let's open it. Let's pay off the thread. Because you've been picturing the shopping bag this whole time, haven't you? Good. Now let me lay out the full image, slowly, the way it was reported. And remember, reported and lawful, and no crime established. I'm describing optics, not offenses. 3 separate handovers, over roughly 4 years. The sums, reportedly, in the millions of euros, around 3 million across the meetings. The containers. On one occasion, that Fortnum Mason carrier bag. On another, reportedly, a hold-all, a suitcase. Cash. Physical banknotes, in the hands of the future head of state, passed to him in person by a Qatari statesman. And then the money, reportedly, was later counted and deposited, passed through his foundation, banked via Coots. The process followed after the fact. Now hold the picture still for 1 second. The future King of England, inside a royal residence, personally receiving bags of foreign cash from a politician, counted afterwards, reportedly, like the takings from a shop at the end of a Saturday. And this is where the vault detail actually bites. Remember? I told you at the start it wasn't the amount, it was what happened to the money next. Here it is. The cash didn't just vanish into a good cause the moment it left the bag. It had to be handled physically. Somebody had to receive banknotes from a foreign politician. Somebody had to count them. Somebody had to carry that cash onward and get it into a bank account. Coots, the foundation, a paper trail that only begins after the cash is already in the building. Think about that sequence for a second. The transparency starts late. The record picks up the money after the interesting part is already over, after it's been in a bag, in a hand, in a room. Everything that would look normal on a bank statement happened. It just happened downstream of the one moment that didn't look normal at all. That's it. That's the knockout. And notice, I didn't allege a single illegal thing, because I don't need to, and there isn't one. The image does all the work. You don't need me to tell you it's wrong. Your own reaction, right now, is the verdict. That's the whole point. Nobody blinks when a banker takes a bag of money. Nobody blinks when a market trader does. Everybody blinks when the man who lectured the nation on ethics for 40 years does exactly the same thing. The moral authority isn't a bystander to the scandal. The moral authority is the scandal. It's the precise thing that makes an otherwise lawful donation land like a slap. If this is the kind of royal story you want told straight, with the receipts, with the fairness, no fairy tales and no witch hunt either, do me a favor and subscribe. It genuinely helps this channel more than you'd think. Right, back to it, because we are not finished with Charles. Not close. Because here's the thing. The cash in the bags is not a one-off. It's not a single strange lapse from an otherwise cautious man. It is the most literal possible expression of a pattern that has run through his entire life. There's a reflex in Charles, and once you see it, it's everywhere. The reflex is this: my cause is good, therefore my methods don't need examining. The ends are noble, so the means are just admin. Look at the pattern. The black spider memos, those private letters, in his own scrawly handwriting, lobbying government ministers directly on his pet causes. When journalists tried to have them released, Charles's side fought it all the way up to the Supreme Court to keep them secret. A future constitutional monarch who's meant to stay out of politics, privately leaning on ministers, and then fighting for years to stop you seeing it. Look at the duchy arrangements, the special tax and legal status, defended endlessly. Over and over. The same instinct from the same man. Because what I'm doing is for a good cause, the normal rules are an inconvenience. Rules are for people with lesser motives than mine. The cash bags aren't an anomaly then. They're the pattern in its purest form. 50 years of a man convinced that good intentions are a kind of permission slip. The cause was charity. The charity was good. So why examine how the money arrived? That question, why examine the method, is one he has spent his whole life not asking. Now, to be fair, and I do want to be fair, there was a defense offered. So let's actually look at it, because how you defend a thing tells you what you're really worried about. The defense went like this. Every penny went to charity. Nothing was pocketed. Charles didn't keep a euro of it. The proper processes were followed afterwards. The money was banked, recorded, declared to the trustees. The auditors were satisfied. And honestly, much of that appears to be true. And I'll say so plainly because it is true and it matters. The money did reach good causes, and no wrongdoing was established. But watch why that reassurance still doesn't quite land. Listen to the actual shape of it. It all went to charity. That sentence answers one question. Did he steal it? And the answer is no, he didn't. Fine. Except nobody's real question was ever, did he steal it? That was never the thing bothering anyone. The real question, the one everybody was actually asking, was why like this? Why the bag? Why the cash? Why in person? Why no trail at the moment it mattered? And the money reached good causes is an answer to a completely different, much easier question. It's a genuine genuine answer, just not to the question anyone asked. And that right there, that little swap, is exactly what makes a defense feel managed instead of honest. When someone answers the easy version of your question very thoroughly and never touches the hard one, you notice. You feel the redirect, and you trust it less, not more. Which brings us to the heart of the whole thing, the moral. And I'll say it flat, because it deserves to be said flat. The monarchy's entire modern justification, the whole product, the thing you're actually buying when you buy the crown, is that it stands above grubby politics and grubbier money. It is the clean thing, the thing above the transaction. That's the pitch. Kings don't haggle. Kings aren't for sale. The crown floats serenely above the grubby marketplace where the rest of us live. And the current king, as heir, personally handled millions in foreign cash, in shopping bags. The institution sells itself as the clean thing above the deal. And the deal, it turned out, came in a Fortnum Mason bag. That's the hypocrisy. Not a crime, I keep saying it because it's true, but a gap. A gap between the thing the monarchy says it is and the thing that happened on the table. And that gap doesn't close, it just sits there. So where does that leave him? Let's look around the room and count who's actually defending the method, because that number tells you everything. It's thin, genuinely thin. Even the sympathetic royal commentators, the ones who'll defend Charles on almost anything, winced publicly at this. They didn't say, that was fine. They said, the optics are unfortunate, which is commentator speak for, please stop talking about it. The anti-monarchy campaigners, of course, seized it like a gift, because it was one. Ethics-minded voices in Parliament raised it, and here's the tell, the real one. The palace's own response was never actually a defense. It was containment. Confirm the facts, add some context, remind everyone it was lawful, and move on. At no point did the palace stand up and argue that the method was fine, because it couldn't. Nobody could, and that's the giveaway. When your own side's entire strategy is explain it and pivot away, rather than defend it and stand there, the argument is already over. They conceded the method the moment they chose to manage the story instead of fighting for it. You don't contain something you're proud of, which brings us to the part he can never undo. He's king now. That's the point of no return. This isn't a story attached to a prince who might fade from view. It's permanently welded to a sitting head of state. It can't be unreported, and it resurfaces every single time. Every time the monarchy reaches for its own moral authority, every time a royal talks about standards or service or doing things properly, someone, somewhere, quietly remembers the bag. So here's where I'll leave you, and here's my honest question. Charles's foundation says the money reached charity, and it did. It says the processes were followed, and they broadly were. Auditors were satisfied. No wrongdoing was established, and I am not alleging a crime, because none exists to allege. I want to be as fair to the king as the facts demand, and the facts demand quite a lot of fairness. But there's one question nobody in that palace ever really answered. If there was genuinely nothing to hide, if this was all clean, all lawful, all destined for good causes, then why did 3 million euros need to travel in a shopping bag? Clean money doesn't need a carrier bag. So which was it for you? Genuine, otherworldly naivety, or a man who understood exactly how it looked and decided the cause was worth it? Tell me below. And if you want the next thread pulled, because it's the natural other half of this one, remember that aide I mentioned? The closest man Charles ever had, the one who resigned? That story is about honors, about whether the one thing in Britain that's supposed to be impossible to buy, a knighthood, a place on the honors list, quietly had a price after all, right next to the future king's own charity, a Saudi billionaire, a letter in writing, and the police. That one's waiting for you right here. I'll see you in it.